They're the world's modern lifelines, the arteries of the global economy. Over 1.4 million kilometers of them transport more than 95% of global data, and probably this very video. If you recently heard about submarine internet cables, it's probably because suspicious cable breaches from Europe to Taiwan have made the news. Every cut cable is a problem, but nowhere could it have a bigger impact than in Taiwan. I'm Divya Gopalan. You're watching Connected on TaiwanPlus. To give us a view from the inside, we are joined by Kenny Huang, chairman of the Taiwan Network Information Center and a member of Taiwan's Critical National Infrastructure Protection Task Force, and Charles Mok, tech entrepreneur, former Hong Kong legislator, and research scholar at Stanford University. And together they wrote a report titled Strengthening Taiwan's Critical Digital Lifeline, and they're passionate advocates for making Taiwan's internet not just more resilient, but also an economic strength. Thank you both so much for being part of the program. Kenny, I'm going to start with you because you've just come back from a NATO meeting in The Hague, I believe, on seabed security, where you presented on strengthening Taiwan's cable security. Can you give us a sense of why there is this interest from NATO countries?
I was invited by NATO to introduce the situation about Taiwan submarine cable situation, especially there are several cable outage in the past few months. And quite coincidentally, NATO, especially Baltic Sea, also happened a lot of submarine cable outage in the end of last year. So they are working on how to solve that kind of issue, because that kind of issue is quite critical and also very complicated, not only concerned with the technical challenge, and especially they are facing a lot of legal and international law challenge. So they try to solve the problem from different dimensions, from technical dimension, try to see whether is any advanced technology can solve or mitigate that kind of situation, and also try to solve the problem from international law, especially United Nations Convention on Law of Sea, try to explore where is any gap in the international law. And also they are highly interested because Taiwan has that kind of so many experience in dealing with the cable outage, especially concerned that kind of outage could be human intervention, especially could be any stakeholder, any particular state, they try to interfere the cable operation. So they are interested to understand how Taiwan going to dealing with that kind of issue.
This is where I want to bring Charles in, and I want to talk about Taiwan's internet vulnerability. Can you tell us how reliant Taiwan's communications infrastructure is on these undersea cables?
Well, for Taiwan, because this is a island state, so obviously going in and out in terms of connectivity to the internet or other telecommunications need, you have to go through undersea cables. Basically, 99%, maybe a little bit of satellite, but everything you have to go under sea. So compared to, for example, when Kenny was talking about Europe, even for the Nordic, they are assisted in some ways for most of those countries, except maybe Iceland. Most of those countries are assisted by landlines. So, but of course, they still have a lot of vulnerability, particularly in the Nordic, because they rely a lot on undersea cables to connect between the countries in that particular region. So I do think that there are a lot of areas that the two regions can leverage and learn from each other's experience, but particularly for Taiwan, because of its geographical situation and also because of the geopolitical tension between across the Taiwan Strait, I think it makes Taiwan in some ways particularly vulnerable.
Absolutely. That's something that always overshadows everything that happens here in Taiwan. But let's take a look at the cables that connect Taiwan through maps and what makes them so vulnerable. Sher Bashir has it.
Taiwan is surrounded by seas. At the beginning of 2025, 14 international submarine cables connect Taiwan with the outside world. reaching across the Pacific and into Southeast Asia. They link to Taiwan at landing stations in 4 locations, 3 in northern Bali, Danshui and Tauchung near Taipei, and 1 in Fangshan in southern Pingdong. A 5th international landing station is set to come online in Taidong on the Pacific East Coast later in May. And the data volumes they carry are ever more massive. From 2014 to 2023, Taiwan's undersea internet bandwidth jumped more than tenfold, from just under 9 to almost 100 terabits per second 1 year ago. That's more than 10 times the bandwidth through all other technologies. Laying and maintaining cables on the bottom of the ocean isn't easy, and they frequently break, sometimes due to natural causes or aging, and increasingly because of human actions, either unintentional or suspected sabotage. In 2023, Taiwan had the highest number of cable outage incidents in years, with 12 cases of damage to or complete cutting of submarine cables. Since the beginning of this year, Taiwan has already seen its undersea cables damaged 5 times. On the 3rd of January, a suspected China-linked vessel was identified as having completely cut off part of the Trans-Pacific Express cable system off northern Taiwan's Yelio. 3 full cable outages between the Matsu Islands and Main Island in the first 2 months were caused by natural deterioration, according to Zhonghua Telecom. And most recently, on February 25th, a vessel and its Chinese crew were detained by Taiwan's Coast Guard after a cable connecting the Penghu Islands to Taiwan was cut off completely where the vessel was observed lingering.
Kenny, you're a member of Taiwan's Critical National Infrastructure Protection Task Force. Since the more recent outages we've seen and we've heard of in that report, what has changed in the conversation with regards to protecting Taiwan's cables? And perhaps even more, what is being done more practically?
One of the issues is the cable maintenance. It takes so long because when you require a repair ship come to a particular outage area, so it takes several months, several weeks to get repaired. So as one of the regulation we has been defined is any domestic cable connecting to Taiwan and Taiwan nearby island, and any cable between that will be classified as a critical infrastructure. And based on the requirement to be a critical infrastructure, they need to conduct a regular risk assessment, and not only risk assessment, we also conduct a periodical drill to validate whether the cable is being maintained according to their service quality, according to their scope of work, according to their standard practice. So doing that kind of periodical review and check it and risk assessment to make sure that kind of cable can maintain a certain level of
what about
quality.
if in an event of sabotage, has the response changed to that? Is there a different tactical response?
Actually, that's a very difficult part because about a sabotage, if the sabotage happened in a cable landing station, and we do have different kind of measurement to dealing with any sabotage near the cable landing station, that consider happening in the land. So we have, for example, like a police, and they will get involved, and also we have a fire station, and all kind of mechanism will be involved. But if the sabotage happened for example, is in the international water, not in the territory water, and that would be one thing very critical because international water is something we cannot reach. And so we require different kind of measurement to see whether we can have advanced monitoring to see, and that can be prevented in advance, or we have any kind of measurement that can be quickly to repair, as Charles mentioned. Can we increase the repair mechanism, repair capability if it happen in the international water? And if it happen in the territory water, and we definitely have more resource to dealing with that if anything outage happen in the territory water.
Now, perhaps Taiwan's most prominent cable cutting incident to date can give a sense of how vulnerable Taiwan is when it comes to communications infrastructure. In February 2023, 14,000 residents and visitors on Taiwan's outlying Matsu Islands were almost entirely cut off from the internet after Chinese vessels breached both cables connecting the frontline archipelago to Taiwan's main island within 1 week. Now, it took almost 2 months to repair, and during this kind of time, connectivity was limited and only available at designated locations. Taiwan's backup microwave communication system has since significantly expanded. Kenny, how much of a replacement can Taiwan's microwave communication systems be for these undersea cables if needed?
Actually, for the major islands such as Matsu Island and Kinmen Island, they have multiple redundancy system. For example, we do have more than one submarine cable connecting to each island. Make sure there will be when one was done, the other one will be backup. And in addition to the cable, submarine cable, we also have microwave in Matsu Island and Kinmen Island. And in addition to the microwave, we also have a satellite including the geo satellite and LEO satellite and the low orbit satellite. So make sure there will be multiple redundant to the two major islands and also with some major islands such as Penghu Island as well. But let's only consider domestic connectivity. Now, with that kind of equipment, that kind of facility cannot move to the international water, cannot move to the international internet connection because that's too far for microwave and too costly to international satellite communication.
Right. So then, Charles, give us some perspective here. How realistic is a scenario where we would lose all internet connections in Taiwan, particularly the main island where the capital is, with cut cables, because cables are cut?
Well, as the video report indicate, there are at least 14 cables connecting to outside of Taiwan. So I have to say that the possibility of all of the cables being cut in a very short period of time is relatively small, but no one can say never never say never about any of these sort of things. So I think the important thing is for us to focus on how we can create more redundancy of these cables, encourage more investment, even though it's not going to happen overnight. These cable network constructions are going to take time. But I think policy should be in place to encourage more investors and more companies, any kind of companies, whether they be internet companies or telecommunication companies, to view Taiwan as an important market and continue to increase the connectivity, because there is an importance of Taiwan to be connected to the world for the global economy, number one, and also because Taiwan's connectivity must be strengthened in order for, let's say, continuing the connectivity between, let's say, Japan with Southeast Asia, because you have to go through Taiwan and the region in order for the neighbors south of you and the neighbors north of you to be connected. So I think these are some of the things that we should also consider.
Now, Taiwan's public and even government departments rely heavily on line. The Japanese communication app was created in the wake of Japan's 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, when phone lines were overwhelmed. In 2023, 99.1% of Taiwanese reported using Line for their phone calls. That's up from around 97% 5 years earlier. And Facebook Messenger came in at almost 50%. So, given this, Kenny, I just want to ask you, if a disaster were to happen that cut off Taiwan's submarine cables, do you expect platforms like Line and Facebook or other communications, particularly the more international ones, to continue working? And would they be able to continue working within Taiwan, if not internationally?
If there's a very significant outage in the international cable, for example, foreign cable all went down at once, and basically the application, all the internet application, not only in the Line, because Taiwan heavily rely on international platform, Line, Google, Facebook, something like that, everything will went down because all the communication rely on international cable. So if the international cable went down, then all the communication will be just went to blank.
Right. And I want to ask about the satellite presence here right now. I do understand Taiwan signed contracts with London-based Eutelsat OneWeb for satellite-based internet, and is in talks with Amazon about the Kuiper internet satellites. Do you think that Taiwan is heading, that's where Taiwan's direction should be heading when it talks about communications infrastructure, Kenny?
One of the key aspects to mitigate that kind of situation, to mitigate potential outage for submarine cable, is try to diversify different kind of communication. For example, we have foreign cable. Is it possible to add a little bit more cable to the Taiwan? Is there any possibility to add additional cable landing station? Is it possible to shift some of the traffic from the physical line to the sky. And that's why we're trying very hard to do at this moment. So far, we are dealing with the LEO operators, such as London-based company and the other company as well. And we're trying hard to ship the possibility to move a very portion of traffic from the land traffic to the sky. But from practical point of view, that kind of efforts still quite insignificant. But we need to work harder to see whether we can explore more options to mitigate the potential vulnerability that could happen in the outage of submarine cable.
Yeah,
Charles.
I agree with. I agree with Kenny on this, and you need to have multiple different options when the cables are damaged and so on. But I think it's also important to remember that the throughput and the speed, the latency, the time delay of fiber optics undersea cables compared to satellite is very different. These are two different technologies. So typically, if you are in a, let's say, truly in a conflict situation, let's say we take the example of Ukraine, it doesn't mean that all the cables or the land connectivity that they lost can be replaced by satellite. Typically, the satellite connectivities is going to be primarily used for emergency or critical government need or military use. So if you were thinking about continuing to use satellite connectivity and at the same speed, and you want to play computer games or use Line or browse on Facebook and so on, that may not be the real purpose. The capacity just simply isn't there, even when they are fully deployed. And again, it takes time to deploy that kind of satellite capability for Taiwan as well. So even if it is deployed, I would imagine that especially if you are in such serious situation, you're going to be, these kind of satellite capacity is going to be primarily used for government emergency purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of communication, basically, because the traffic compared to the capacity cannot compare with the submarine cable capacity. So basically, even when we're using the satellite, I think that kind of traffic can be limited for any emergency use or any very specific application only.
What do you think? Would you survive an internet breakdown? Have you thought about your plans if your key apps no longer work? Well, if you're watching on YouTube, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And click the thumbnail to watch our guests discuss if there's opportunities for Taiwan in many countries' worries about internet security.